Good morning. It's fantastic to have you all here. I just wish I had my voice here as well, but we'll do our best. I'm Heather Hopkins, Managing Director of NextWealth, and delighted to welcome you here for NextWealth Live 2022, where we reimagine wealth management, or retail investing, as it says on the slide. So today's event is about bringing together different parts of the industry. We've got financial advisors, people from platforms, people from asset management firms, fintech, tech companies, to bring all those different parts of the industry together to think about what could we be as an industry to try and reimagine wealth management. We have a fantastically well-informed audience here today, all of you, and I know there's more people coming who are going to be sitting upstairs. I won't be able to see them, unfortunately, but we want to get you involved. So I have a microphone here, which I'll be throwing around. I have really bad aim, so it'll keep us all awake as well. So we want to get you involved in each of the sessions to ask questions, make comments, provide some input to the debate. We also have some amazing speakers. We were really honored by the response we had to this event. We'll be kicking off with a CEO panel in a few minutes. We've got sessions on the customer, advice, technology, the product future flows, and I'll be wrapping up with a fireside chat with Martin Gilbert at the end of the day. I think we're in for a real treat. So thank you to the speakers who've agreed to join us today. And also thank you to our sponsors. Of course, because of their generous support, we're able to charge you a mere pittance for your tickets. Without their support, we'd have to charge you far more. So your job is to make sure you go around and visit our sponsors today, go to their stands. We've gone a bit old school. You got a passport when you came in today. If you get a stamp from each of the sponsors, you stand to win a fantastic prize. There's 2 prizes, so we'll have a raffle at the end of the day. So Bravura, FE Fund Info, Money Hub, Orgo, and Penn Partnership, thank you so much for supporting us today. We also have a stand for We Are Change. And We Are Change is a fantastic nonprofit initiative in the industry run by the group at Verve, and it's about bringing new talent into the industry. And we can't really talk about the future of our industry without thinking about how we bring in new talent to the industry. So we think they're a really important part of that conversation. So thank you to our sponsors. Please go visit them, and so we'll keep them happy and keep ticket prices low for next year. A few other little housekeeping bits. The Wi-Fi should be open. I have no idea if it is. If you can't get on it, I'm sure somebody will be able to help you, but it should be open and available for you. If you have any issues, I'm sure one of the NextWealth team can help. Hashtag for the event is NextWealth Live. So if you're tweeting, we will be. You can use the hashtag. We have lots of coffee breaks. I promise there will be coffee at the next coffee break. Apologies. It was a bit slow this morning. And I've already mentioned the passport. And Bravura are hosting a drinks reception at the end of the day in the library. So if you'd like to stay to have more of a conversation after the event, we hope you will. So the theme for today is reimagine. Reimagine wealth management. And it's pretty easy to say reimagine, but what does that really mean? It's not obvious, right? And it's not easy to think about, well, how do I reimagine my industry? We've got, the regulators determining a lot of the way that we need to operate. We've got, legacy product, legacy systems. How do we reimagine? And so what I want to do is just start with 3 stories, 3 examples of industries, individuals who've reimagined their business, a way of doing business, an approach to doing business, to help crystallize what I mean by reimagine. And then if your job today is to think about how you can reimagine your role, your business, the industry, and hopefully, as I said, contribute to the conversation as we go. So first story, did you walk by Michael Faraday's statue coming in? He has a mask on now, which is really appropriate. So Michael Faraday, when he was doing his work in his lab downstairs, which you can visit, and I definitely recommend if you have a chance to visit the museum downstairs that you do. His lab is fully intact. There's only one thing in that lab that's changed since he was doing his work here at the Royal Institution. He discovered in this building the principle of electromagnetism. And he actually presented his findings about electromagnetism in this very theater, standing on this very stage. So if any of you have ever had imposter syndrome, trust me, I've got it now. So now I'm not going to talk about how Michael Faraday reimagined electromagnetism, but his discovery was an important part of the discovery of electrification. So the story I'm going to talk about is factories. So I'm going to put this down. I have to make sure I don't lose my place. But the story is about electrification of factories. Now, this picture that you can see here is of a factory powered by a steam engine. And if you think about what factories looked like before the machine age, before the Industrial Revolution, there was a central axle powered by a steam engine that turned all of the gears and crankshafts and pulleys of all of the machines that were being powered by that central source of power. And the machines that needed the most power had to be positioned closest to that power source. And so engineers structured factories thinking about that central power source, and they built multiple levels so that you could have machines getting the power from below and above that central source of power. And we think about the huge productivity gains that came from electrification of factories. But actually, what happened was those factory owners, they just took out the steam and put in the biggest electric motor that they could find. And they didn't see any improvements in productivity. The factories were cleaner, they were a bit safer, they were potentially a nicer environment to work in, but they didn't see those gains in productivity. It actually took 30 years. Professors at Stanford have looked at this in the US, and it took 30 years for those productivity gains to be realized. So what changed in those 30 years? Well, one of the things that changed is the managers of those factories changed. They retired. People who had grown up, who were native to electrification, who had electricity in their school, in their school environment, in their house potentially. They knew what electricity delivered and how it could be used, and thought differently about how to structure those factories. There was also a lot of time to learn and innovate. And what happened was those factory managers reimagined the way they structured the factory and the way they laid that out. And they look really similar to what you see on this slide, the factories that were developed at the beginning of, or in that 30-year period after the dawn of the machine age. Factories became, instead of vertically organized, really horizontal. Huge, huge buildings filled with machines with a local power source. And instead of being organized around the power, they were organized about the flow of materials. And that reimagining of the factory, not around the central power source, but around the flow of materials, that was what contributed to the twofold and sometimes threefold increase in productivity that we think about when we think about the electrification of factories. So that's that first example of reimagining. The next one is furniture. So when my parents were children, my grandparents would buy furniture for the ages. I don't know about you. I still have my grandmother's sofa, and I have strong memories of particular events around that sofa, and that's really important to me. But they bought furniture to last the ages, to pass to the next generation. And there was a man in Sweden, Ingvar Kamprad, founder of IKEA, who had an insight in the 1950s that there were all these houses being built in Sweden. There was this rise of consumerism. He looked at what was happening in fashion, people buying clothing not to keep for decades, but to use for particular events or for periods of their life. And he had the insight that he could do the same with furniture. So I'm just going to take a sip of water. He had an insight that he could apply the same principles to furnishing, lower the cost, and rather than have that furniture last for the ages, last for periods of time. You think about, I don't know how many of you have had to buy some furniture during lockdown to make your home office work. Some of us used IKEA. I certainly have lots in the kids' playroom that I'd love to get rid of. We all have bits of IKEA furniture around, and it serves its purpose for a period of time. And he reimagined the furniture industry. The vision he defined for the company was to create a better everyday life for the many people, thinking about the mass market, not thinking about people who had money to make investments for future generations in furniture. So really rethinking and reimagining furniture. But of course, he also reimagined distribution. Nobody had an idea that you'd have people assembling their furniture at home. And how many of you have spent a hideous Sunday afternoon trying to assemble what you bought at IKEA, right? But reimagining furniture. The last example is smart contracts. Now, we haven't seen smart contracts necessarily in practice, but it is a really good example, I think, of reimagining that while it's less close to home, potentially closer to our industry. So smart contract, the term smart contract was first used in the writing of Nick Szabo. He's a computer scientist, and he wrote his paper referencing smart contracts about 25 years ago. And I'm going to put up the quote so I don't have to remember it. He defined them as computerized transaction protocol that executes terms of a contract. Now, I don't know about you. I could read that about 6, 7 times and it might sink in what it is. But the other thing that Nick did is he used a really helpful analogy. And I should say that Nick was also one of the pioneers of the Bitcoin movement and founded a cryptocurrency that predated Bitcoin called BitGold. And the guy's pretty remarkable. But he likened smart contracts to a vending machine. And I think it's a really, really helpful analogy to help me understand smart contracts. So with a vending machine, you put in a coin, you choose your snack, and that snack is delivered. There's full transparency of the inventory available, and there's full transparency that that contract has been fulfilled because you can see your snack delivered to you. In his paper, he actually, because he's a computer programmer, put it in these sort of coding terms of coin inserted, snacks plus snack selection equals snack delivered. So you have the defined input and defined output. And his idea was that you could host that on a blockchain to make it transparent and visible and trustless. And I think that analogy really helps. Now, we haven't seen smart contracts, as I said, really disrupting our industry yet. But if you think about the number of contracts that exist in wealth management and in society, there certainly are potential opportunities to disrupt there and reimagine what a contract might look like. So I'm going to bring my remarks to a close and invite our panel up to the stage. I mentioned this theme of reimagining. I hope those examples have helped you to think about what reimagining might look like. And it's not something that happens overnight. It took those factory owners 30 years. But the factories that didn't innovate, they went out of business. They didn't see the great productivity gains. It's not about replacing one piece of technology with another. It's about thinking about how to make use of that technology. But technology is only an enabler. We all have the power to think about how we transform our industry.